Welcome everybody to our first of the Drive to Zero webinar series. We are trying to get a few of the logistics worked out right now, so please bear with us if we have anything that kind of goes wonky, but we did start recording this. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started since we are right at 12 o'clock. So thank you for all joining. Good afternoon. Again, this is the first webinar of our Drive to Zero webinar series. My name is Haley Doherty. I'm the State Highway Safety Engineer with KDOT, and I'm very glad that you're here today. We have a great lineup of speakers for you who will share how they transformed safety studies and plans into meaningful improvements on their roadways. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules. First, all of your attendees are going to be in listen-only mode. The chat is going to be disabled, but please utilize the Q&A pod if and when you have questions for our presenters. Logistically speaking, we will go through all of our presentations first, and then we'll conclude the webinar with the Q&A portion and a quick poll before you leave. And this webinar is going to be recorded and can be found at the Drive to Zero webinar page through the Kansas LTAP. The QR code that is being shown right now will take you right to that web page. So now I'm going to jump right in and we're going to introduce you to our first speaker. Casey Quinn is a lifelong Atchison County resident currently serving her 6th year as County Commissioner. A Benedictine College graduate and licensed real estate broker, she is passionate about helping others and strengthening her community. Casey brings a relationship-focused, goal-oriented approach to everything she does. She lives in rural Atchison County with her husband, Joe, and through 3 children. In her free time, she enjoys family activities, watching her kids play sports, fishing, and connecting with friends. Please welcome Casey.
Thank you, Haley. Let's share. I appreciate the opportunity to come today and share with you guys. Okay. All right. Everybody good? You can see my presentation?
I think you're good. Go ahead, Casey.
Okay, perfect. So thank you. My name is Casey Quinn, and I'm one of 3 Atchison County Commissioners. And I am here today to talk a little bit about our putting safety into practice in Atchison County, what that's looked like over the past several years, and don't want to begin without giving credit to our former Atchison County Road and Bridge Superintendent, Joe Snyder. He was part of this as well. So very thankful for him throughout these last few years. So I came on as County Commissioner in 2020, right around the time that Joe Snyder took the Road and Bridge Superintendent job. So we had new leaders stepping up in Atchison County to make a difference. With that, we quickly noticed that the resources did not match up to the needs. And so we were hungry for every opportunity we could get. We started applications for our high-risk rural roads project funding. My job was to get out and talk to constituents and get the needs and the letters of support, and we were hustling. We were putting in applications and continued to see denied results. And so with that, we wanted to get more involved. We started attending conferences. The conference that sticks out to me that kind of kicked this off for us was I attended a conference in Oskaloosa, Kansas in 2021. It was wonderful. KDOT leadership was there, and we had the opportunity to collaborate with the KDOT leadership and really just seek guidance, right? Like share our frustrations, like what can we do? How can we be better as a county as we had received the denials? One of the things we quickly learned, right, is that rewards and funding do not go to counties that have not taken initiative on themselves to make a positive impact. So that hit home for us. And I think it was a challenge and a look in the mirror of like, okay, we're new leadership, but we have to think differently than previous leadership, and we really need to step it up and figure out, what we need to do here at home to make a difference. So that turned us on to our local road safety plan. We looked at an analysis and ranking. We reviewed data, and we really took a broader look at our rural roads and the safety challenges that we faced here at home. So with that, Atchison County, the majority of our population is in the city of Atchison, and we have many miles of rural roads that are very dark at night. They're hilly, a lot of areas with frequently have dense fog. We have great agriculture traffic around the clock, and from all of Northeast Kansas and Atchison County. Our rural roads, majority have a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, high traffic counts, and they're fairly narrow. So we really outlined what those challenges look like, and then we determined this is just showing we're blessed to have much industry when it comes to agriculture in Atchison County, but with that comes excessive traffic year round these days with grain hauling and just traffic on our rural roads. So what the process looked like is after reviewing our challenges, we felt like that the white line striping, which was also a KDOT initiative at the time that we were learning more about, really was a great fit for Atchison County. After we compiled our data, we outlined our safety challenges, and we started researching and developing a plan for the white line striping. We chose a couple of our main hard surface roads with our highest traffic volumes. So we chose 286 that runs from Atchison to Lancaster on into Effingham, as well as 262 that connects 59 highway with 73. We felt like those would be good. They seen the high traffic counts and they were narrow and very dark. So we completed an RFP for white line striping, and we decided let's do this. So we initiated the first test and striped our first road November 1st of 2022. At this point, we were very excited because internally we knew these are challenges. This is a resource to help our citizens, and we really hoped that it panned out. But again, it was a test because you all, as an elected official, you lean on constituent feedback, and historically, this hadn't been thought of or implemented before. So this was an exciting day. This is a picture of them on one of our roads striping. And then the constituent feedback came in, and it was, as an elected official, we get feedback every day, and a lot of it's good and some of it not so good. This is one initiative, the white line striping on our hard surface roads, that has been overwhelmingly positive. There hasn't been one negative about the dollars spent. We were receiving phone calls and texts and emails thanking us. It just reaffirmed for us that safety must be a priority for leaders who serve the public, and that the dollars that were spent with improving the safety outcome were really minimal in the grand scheme of things. So today in 2026, we continue to receive thank yous and hear how the white striping initiative that began back in 2022 has allowed our citizens to make it home safely on our rural roads. This is just a testimony that we received from Wade Meeks. He's our Atchison County Farm Bureau president. And according to Wade said, having the rural county paved roads striped has been such an improvement for all travelers, especially the ag community and semi-truck traffic through fall harvest and beyond. The work the county commissioners, along with Road and Bridge Department, has done to make our roads safer is noticed and appreciated by all members of the community. I have heard from many how much nicer it is to travel from Lancaster to Effingham on the main blacktop, having the white lines to help guide you, whether that be early mornings, late nights, or during weather events. We can all feel safer now about making it to our destination. So Wade is very involved in the community, talks to a lot of different people. So hearing from him meant a lot as well. So fast forward to today, what are we doing in Atchison County in 2026? Well, we are edge line striping all of our hard surfaced rural roads. In 2023, we created a policy for our Road and Bridge Department to make white line striping mandatory. So every year we do an RFP for our striping services, and our rural hard surface roads are on a 3-year rotation plan. So every hard surface road improvement receives the reflective edge striping every time. So safety is now a standard in Atchison County, Kansas. I think reflecting back over the past several years, the core insights that our takeaways is in making a positive impact for our citizens, safety must be a priority. Getting involved, networking, asking questions, listening to the answers you get, implementing what you learn from others, and how we found success with the white lines. We must be proactive rather than reactive. Take some chances. We didn't know how it would go, but we felt inside that it needed to be done to improve the safety, and it was overwhelmingly successful. So we will never stop learning, collaborating, and things will never be good enough for us here in Atchison County. So anytime we can take part in events like this and share our story, we're very appreciative of that. So I just wanted to say thank you to Haley and the KDOT team and the GFT team for organizing this webinar and allowing me to share our journey to improve safety in Atchison County, Kansas.
Thank you, Casey. That was wonderful. And I'm really excited about the things that are happening in Atchison County. I love to hear the feedback that you're getting as well. I think that's super helpful and useful. I'm reminding everybody that please utilize the Q&A pod for right now. We will move on to our next presenter, and then at the very end, we'll do all Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Dan Squires. Dan is the development director for the city of Derby, Kansas. He's a licensed engineer since 2001 and has worked for the city for 24 years. In his current role, he oversees the city's planning, engineering, building trades, GIS, and economic development functions. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity today. I'm assuming, can everybody see my screen?
Yes. You are good.
Yep. All right, good to go. This is going to come across as a little bit as a sales pitch for KDOT's TEAP program, but this is a program that we've used for years, and we're real positive. We value our relationship with KDOT through a number of programs. They've been great partners for us in a lot of communities in Kansas, and the TEAP program is one that we've used for a long time. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the projects we've done really briefly, and then dig a little deeper into a specific project that was probably more significant than what normally comes out of a TEAP project. So I can move forward. All right, I'm having a little technical challenge here. There we go. So for our project history, we've been doing TEAP projects for over 30 years. First one I'm aware of was in 1996. That's even 5 or 6 years before I came here. Our initial TEAP projects largely focused on school area analysis. It was pedestrian crashes and school safety. They were largely signing projects, very easy to implement. You can see there in 96, we did a general school crossing analysis at several schools. We did another one of 3 specific schools in 2000. We did one where our middle school and 6th grade center were on opposite sides of Woodlawn Boulevard in 2001. Those were just easy projects that we got expertise, traffic engineering expertise at the time, and that we could implement very easily in-house. Not a lot of expense. It's just signing and pavement marking. In 2004, we evaluated parking at Pleasant View Elementary. That was a little bit different. That was the school district and residents in the neighborhood coming to us. At that time, the latchkey program for USD 260 was housed entirely at Pleasant View Elementary, which was a small school in a residential neighborhood that was built in the late 50s. It had very little parking. We were getting a lot of complaints as parents picked up their kids, particularly in the afternoon. They were blocking people's driveways and things like that. So the TEAP program recommended changing a couple of streets to one-way streets. We were able to stripe angled parking in there and alleviate some of that concern. So In 2009, we had this was another school related, but it's a Woodlawn and English intersection. And that one had to do with kids also trying to get to Swaney Elementary School and needing to cross Woodlawn, which is either a minor arterial or a major collector in Derby, depending on how you look at it, but had a lot of school traffic. It serves several elementary schools and the middle school and the 6th grade center at the time. And kids needed to cross the street to get there and didn't have a good way to do it. That one resulted in that intersection being signalized. So we did design a traffic signal and implement the recommendations of that plan. In 2011, we did the Nelson Drive crash analysis. I'm going to dig a little deeper into that one, but we've also done other projects since. In 2018, we did a Buckner pedestrian crossing. The 6th grade center went away, ironically, after we did the original 2001 study. Fire station was built there, and then the Rec Commission changed the cafeteria area into a space for them, and they asked us to reevaluate the need for signalization now as they carted kids back and forth from their rec center to that facility. So that's one of a couple of areas that have actually been studied twice as conditions changed in the city. So the things that we really like about the TEAP program, first of all, is it's really, really easy. On your left there is the application. If you're not familiar with it, I mean, that's the entire application. You don't need to hire an engineer to fill out an application for this. You tell them what the problem is and you submit it. It's really easy. Then KDOT has on-call consultants that are professional traffic engineers that then provide technical guidance back and make recommendations. They'll go out and do traffic counts and do an analysis. They run it back through KDOT, so KDOT's traffic engineers also get to comment on it. We've found what we get out of these, and we've done a lot of them, is a very common sense approach to solutions. So in some cases, we've got a range of solutions, not just a marking plan, but here's what you could do in the short term and for rarely little money, and here's something you could consider long term if you want to do more. And so that's been pretty easy for us to implement. The other advantage to us is that it's independent from city staff. So we get a lot of calls, concerns, particularly at the start of school. We get people who are calling in whose kids are now on a new walking route. And oh my gosh, we need a crosswalk here. Or my kid used to go to this school and the district changed it this year, and now they go to this school and they've got to cross this street. So we get a lot of those, and oftentimes the community is not open to a engineering explanation from city staff on what is realistic or not realistic. So when you go outside of the organization and you hire professional traffic engineers and KDOT and a consultant has reviewed it and made a recommendation, that seems to be more acceptable to our public and certainly more acceptable for our elected officials to fall back on and say, well, this isn't the city not wanting to do something. This is engineering methodology, and it's really been evaluated by these outside people. So another huge advantage is it's free. So that's great in the cost-effective piece of it. These are usually not huge projects, but it also frees up the ability to respond fairly quickly. You don't have to find money in a budget. When you get a complaint or a concern raised, you don't have to take it to council to get, depending on your spending authority, to get things approved, that sort of thing. So it makes you pretty easy to react quickly to the process. So our 2011 Nelson Drive TEAP study was a much more extensive study than is typically done by a TEAP. It's about 2 miles of corridor where we had basically a frontage road that runs parallel to K-15 highway through town. We had an elevated crash experience there. The reasoning was pretty simple. The frontage road where other streets intersects K-15 is literally about 40 feet off of K-15. So you end up with 2 intersections immediately adjacent to each other. If somebody's going through on Nelson Drive, they have to look back 180 degrees to see if somebody's turning right off of K-15. And so That was the scope of the problem. This one actually, we were very appreciative of KDOT, but they didn't have enough funding available in the year that we requested it to evaluate it immediately. And they said, apply for it, or we'll just hold it over to next year and we think we can do it. And they did. So talking about the crash characteristics, it identified 3 intersections of concern. Those intersections had crash rates of between 11 and 33 crashes per 10 million entering vehicles. And at the time in 2011, what was typically experienced on the highway system was 8 to 10 crashes. What was particularly concerning, if you look at the right angle collisions over there, is the number of right angle collisions. So right angle collisions have a tendency to be more likely to result in injuries or fatalities, and just a lot more damage. So that was particularly concerning, and it really related to the nature of those intersections. So the first thing we did, I didn't put a slide in here for this, but the first recommendation of this TEAP was the easy quick fix, which was signing. Advise motorists as they're approaching the intersection that the K-15 traffic doesn't stop and things like that. We did that same year of the study. We immediately implemented those changes, and then we started working towards some other ones. The first one, we actually made physical geometric improvements, was constructed in 2013 on Red Powell Drive, and it was median improvements. Again, this was a next phase of what, easy, a little less easy, much more difficult. So this was kind of phase 2. It was easy to install. We were getting ready to mill and overlay Red Powell, so it was a good time to deal with the pavement markings. We constructed the geometric improvements for somewhere in the neighborhood of $65,000. We did not need any new right-of-way, so it was a pretty easy project to implement. It was extremely unpopular. We took away turning movements. People who'd driven through there before weren't able to do what they wanted. We ended up with people driving around the bullnose of the median, just disobeying what was going on there. We had a business owner down there that came to council. Several of them came to council to complain. And one even said, well, we might just have to live with a few accidents and injuries if this is what it takes to make it safer. We just need to take the median out and go back to what we had before. So we did end up revisiting that one. I'll talk about that in a minute. At Meadowlark Boulevard, we went straight to one of the more expensive options. Took a little more time to design and build. In 2015, we pulled the access road back behind Quick Trip and Burger King. That was a great project. We were able to partner with KDOT on that. We got 90% of the construction paid for with federal aid safety funds. So we were very pleased with that. The construction cost there is listed to the city as $79,000. It's 10% of the cost. I will tell you that we spent probably $500,000 in right-of-way as part of that project. So that wasn't the total cost. But again, having an identified need and being able to rely on that and then go back to KDOT when funding became available was really beneficial to us, and we were able to access safety funds to address that safety concern. And this was probably the worst accident intersection that we had in Derby. It was signalized and had the access road going through. So it was a really good project for us. So we went back to Red Powell, but the next options at Red Powell were going to be millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. And that area was somewhat unique in the fact that a large portion of it, at the north portion of there, was developed in the county in the 50s and 60s. It had great visibility from K-15. It had really poor access and circulation within it. It's a bunch of, and still is, a bunch of old metal buildings that were built in the 60s and early 70s that have outlived their useful life. And we kind of came backwards and said, well, if we're going to do something out here, what can we do for the whole area more than just the need for a safety improvement? So we created the K-15 area plan. We had a lot of public meetings. We talked to the property owners. We did a full traffic and safety analysis. KDOT was involved as a stakeholder in it, with it being on the state highway system. And what you see here is the plan that came out of that. And that was to pull the intersection back at Red Powell, and then also involved adding a new signalized access there. The block building you see on the bottom of that picture is Walmart. The area up to the north is proposed to be developed by Menards and is owned by Menards. So really just addressing a whole new vision for that entire area. In just recently, we had a ribbon cutting on the project in May. So it was constructed in 2025-26. It's about a $7.5 million project. We were again able to find outside funding to help with this project. So we got 80% of construction funded through WAMPO, our local MPO. So those are sub-allocated funds through KDOT to the local MPO. Our costs, there were non-participating costs, particularly in the roundabout. There's lighting and other features that kind of improve the area that were not participating funds. So we didn't get off with just the 20%. And there was probably $1 million worth of right of way in this too. But again, $7.5 million of outside funding that we were able to really make a substantial difference in this area and significantly improve safety. Ultimately, the businesses are also improving because previously traffic avoided the Nelson Drive corridor to some extent because they knew it was unsafe and it was just awkward to drive. And now it's safer and the traffic flow is better. So we're seeing traffic counts increase on Nelson Drive. So the last piece of it was Patriot Avenue. This was a slightly different situation. It did not align right at the intersection, but it aligned in a wide intersection that was offset from the main entrance to Lowe's. And so we had a lot of conflicting turning movements, people wanting to turn left onto 63rd Street from Nelson Drive and people wanting to turn left onto 63rd Street out of Lowe's, creating crashes at that location. The study recommendation was to realign Nelson Drive at this location. There were some other median options as a kind of a stopgap measure in here. So like I said, there have been different levels and costs and impacts associated with those changes, but this was the one that we selected. The current estimate for that project is $3 million, and we have established a tax increment finance district for the area. And so that basically baselines the property taxes for the area. And then as the property taxes increase, then you can capture that increase in the property taxes to build the improvements for the area. That's a little different. It's got to be a blighted area, which we benefited from having the old metal buildings and things in the area. But that was a mechanism that we found that we can fund that. It does rely largely on Menards because that's the largest jump in the increment of the tax base to fund the project. So that's what I have. That's, as I said, we really like the TEAP program, especially for small communities who don't have engineers on staff. It's a great opportunity for technical guidance that you might not have in-house. And it's a great program with a number of opportunities.
Thank you, Dan, for that. I think those are some really great examples of how to utilize that TEAP program. Some really great things that came out of it, so I love seeing it. All right, we'll move on to our last, but certainly not least, of our speakers. We have Mike Armour. Mike received a civil engineering degree from Kansas State University. He is currently the traffic engineer for the city of Wichita, and his responsibilities include safety analysis, permitting, ITS, and traffic signal design of approximately 500 traffic signals. Dan, let's get the screen turned over to you. All right.
Thanks, Haley. I just want to go over kind of some of the efforts we're doing here at the city of Wichita regarding traffic safety. Obviously, this isn't all encompassing, but the first one involves quite a bit of KDOT support, and the other two are kind of what we're doing a little bit more on the local level. So the three kind of topics here are going to be the Safe Streets for All grant that we got, implementation grant that we got with for the Broadway corridor. What we're doing here recently for subdivision regulations with the city and county. what our efforts are for traffic calming in neighborhoods. The second and third kind of go together and is the aim of local streets in the residential neighborhoods, but kind of by two different avenues. So just those three topics again. So the first one, Safe Streets for All, Broadway corridor. This is a 7-mile long project from 37th Street North to Pawnee Avenue at the south end. When the CSAP, Comprehensive Safety Action Plan for WAMPO, was put together, which was a requirement by the feds before any of the cities in the area could ever apply for federal grant funding, that plan had to be in place. It recognized a lot of the intersections along this corridor as being in the top 10. So we kind of thought we might have a good project on our hands. We were already familiar with Broadway having some issues, especially there at the connecting link. And so we kind of rolled in those other adjacent intersections in the central business district, those ones underneath Kellogg, right there at our downtown core. Along this corridor, there are actually 30 signals. 3 of them include railroad preemption. There is 1 railroad crossing itself of the corridor. And then some of the information there about three of the intersections for signalized are in the top 10. For vulnerable road users, we had 5 intersections in the top 10. Our grant, we kind of were optimistic. We had heard that the feds hadn't even allocated all the implementation funding the previous year. And so we kind of thought, well, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us to go after some of that, which traditionally is a very competitive process to go after discretionary funds on the national level. I think it hovers around 11% traditionally is what gets selected from applications. And having submitted a couple of other grants, I've had that frustrating experience that you kind of get told no. It's a 9-to-1 chance that you're going to get told no. But we went after this one. We thought, hey, if we're going to go after it, we're going to go for broke. We're going to ask for kind of essentially the max amount because we got a long corridor and there's quite a bit that we could throw money at. So we did. We went for a $25 million project, which would equate to a $20 million Fed on the 80-20 percentage, and we got selected for it. The great thing about this is the $5 million required local match. This is where was a huge support from KDOT was the state was the local infrastructure hub. They put in 4.75 million of that 5 million as part of as non-federal dollars to meet that to help us with that local match. So it leaves the city with $250,000 local agency match out of that $25 million project, which is 1%, which is pretty incredible. So we're really excited about getting that award. Subdivision roadway. Oh, a little bit about that too, just where we're at on that project. We're finalizing the agreement with the feds, and we have an RFQ that was out. We have a couple of consultants selected for interviews coming up here shortly. So we will be selecting a consultant to start the design of improvements along Broadway. The treatments that we're looking at are assessing the lane configurations through the corridor, see if we can fit in a center turn lane. We're looking for the turning movement crashes. We are looking at bulb outs and what we can do at the intersections for vulnerable road user safety. I'm moving on to the subdivision changes and efforts that we're looking at too. This is a very much a collaborative effort. It's not just City of Wichita. It's actually a lot of the developers. A lot of the consultants or agents for developers have been involved in these discussions, and the planning department is obviously, and Sedgwick County. So we receive quite a few complaints and concerns from residents on the local streets. Even though local streets don't have as many crashes, obviously, as the arterial intersections or arterial streets, that's, I think, where people feel most, vulnerable and saying, hey, this is right outside my front door, literally, and the traffic, how it's operating in our neighborhood is almost kind of the greater concern than when they're out there on the arterial streets. Sometimes we hear just more complaints, even though it's not as many crashes. It's still paramount in their lives. So we're kind of been wondering, okay, how do we address this on our subdivisions when we're looking at roadway widths that are still holding on from the 70s? Do those still apply today, or can we tweak those to try to maybe narrow them up? We go into subdivisions, and some subdivisions and the roads are really wide and just feel kind of like a racetrack. And it doesn't help too that some HOAs prohibit parking along the street. So the intended use of the street to be through traffic and parking is just through traffic now with wider, more available pavement width, which makes it feel even more open and speeds creep up even higher. I'll tell you, one of the challenges that we did have to just tackle when we were going through this is that we are looking at safety of and speeds of the traveling public, but we need to take into account needs of like other users. So fire department, when they're responding to an emergency call, if they have to put out a fire, what do their codes say? Well, what do their practices dictate? And so one of them was that they needed 20-foot minimum pavement width for them to put out one of their bigger rigs with the outriggers that come out of the sides of the truck. So that did on occasion kind of rein in a little bit of what we were wanting to do. So here's an example on the left. It was just one of the, there's several different pavement sections in that code, and we weren't able to change all of them, but we thought, well, hey, we did go and look at every single section and evaluate to see if we could adjust those widths or not. So on the left is the old one, on the right is the new one. And I'll give a shout out and credit to Jason Gish with MKC. He's the one that put together the illustration on the right. He did an excellent job, really made it dressed up, made it feel like it was in the 21st century. But you can see the pavement width there, the dimension 35 feet back of curb to back of curb, which would have been 34 feet face to face. And on the right, 28 face to face. So both of them have parking, but the driveway width outside of the parking area was 18 foot on the left and then 12 foot on the right. And what you find in the residential neighborhoods is there's so many driveways that people, even with the 18 feet, you're really yielding to the oncoming car as you travel through the residential street and you're pulling over to the driveway. So, and if there's no one parked there, then that, and you're encountering another vehicle, there's really no need to do that slow down maneuver. And it's, again, the comfortability that we're hearing from residents of saying, hey, speeds in my neighborhood seem to be a little bit too high. And this still operates just effectively the same as what we were finding traditionally, but with a greater effect on, we anticipate, and we've seen on some roads that are already kind of about following these dimensions on slowing the speeds down a little bit. Here's just another one where the collector road feeding through a neighborhood had the parking on it in one of the options, and we said, hey, is that parking really needed on the collector? Because really a lot of times the houses are not fronting that street, they're fronting the side roads feeding off of the collector or the cul-de-sacs feeding off of it. So we said, yeah, let's look at an option that's pared down a decent amount. So that's where we have these G2A revisions. We also then, maybe transitioning here, the last element of what we're kind of trying to champion here is with the complaints that we were receiving from residential neighborhoods, what can be done to slow people down besides just the street width, which would be in the subdivision regulations, This here is not in the regulations, but this is something that we've started implementing here over the last few years in a response to be a little bit more proactive for neighborhood designs before any homes are built. So we're not hearing from anyone that lives in there yet, but based off of other neighborhoods, how should we be looking at the design of future subdivisions? And the first and primary goal is that, hey, the subdivision should be designed with broken up streets, curves to it, stuff that more naturally lends itself to slower speeds and not as much cut through. However, we know that there are constraints that materialize when you're looking at a piece of property or what you can or can't do with street layout. This one was a good example. This is Blue Lake. This was east side of the floodway, north of MacArthur. It's a long, skinny tract of land. It sat undeveloped for several years, changed hands a couple of times, and the developers just couldn't find a way to make money on it. And then they decided, hey, there was going to be industrial, let's do residential, but you're going to have one long, straight roadway. And so I was like, there's no way we can just build that roadway straight as an arrow and not do anything else to it, or else we're just going to have an issue after the fact. So that's where this was kind of the first one that we really started to put into practice these traffic calming elements on the street. So what we're looking at here is a chicane where you see those two bulbs that are protruding into the roadway. And there's actually two different types of this, or two variations of this. They're either offset, which we call a chicane, or they're lined up across from each other, which we call a blocker. And it's been well received. We've been doing this now on a lot of other subdivisions as well. And what I expected to receive from the developers and the consultants was some pushback, but there wasn't any. Everyone bought into it because I think they recognized the need for it, where it was coming from, and then obviously the benefit to their clients or to the buyers, to the homeowners. We haven't done any, but there's no before and after on these because they're being constructed with the roadway. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, how does this materialize into amount of speed reduction? I will tell you the bulb outs. Oh, there was something with that I was going to go. I can't remember right now, but we do get asked on the designs, and we're not locked into this. I will say we do try to do a little bit more of horizontal treatment, meaning a bulb out going into the roadway rather than like a hump. We're not completely opposed, but we just get a little bit more nervous on vertical treatments because you lose as much traction with the roadway. If there's any turning movement occurring nearby when you're encountering them, it could cause issues. But the bulb out depth there, or how much into the roadway, it'll kind of materialize on this next one. But some people get just freak out. Well, you can't do that. You have an object in the roadway. I'm like, so is a parked car. And so that's been our guidance, is that the amount of those bulb outs protrude into the roadway mirrors or mimics close to the same dimension that a parked car would. Now you can elongate them or shorten them, that's fine. But the width into the travel way, we are mimicking a parked car, but you don't have to rely on the decision of a homeowner to park a vehicle out there, and that which might only be there part of the day. So this is kind of a permanent effect of a parked car. So that's for a new development. We run into a lot of our complaints result in obviously existing neighborhood. Nobody's complaining about a home that they don't live in yet. So we have all these existing neighborhoods. Here's a pilot program that we decided to do. Here's on 27th Street South, west of Seneca, and half a mile long straight roadway. And there's no stop signs along here, which again, stop signs are not made for speed control. They're help with right of way when normal operations break down based off of volumes or crash history. So speeds for this area weren't extreme, but I would say they're probably in that uncomfortable area. They were just above 30 miles an hour is what we're seeing. Again, 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, but what people are comfortable with, they probably want something a little bit less than that. And again, those are average, and 85ths were above that. Average was less, 85th was above 30. So we kind of said, hey, what are some options here? You know, we mentioned I showed you that chicane option before, which was the curb itself wrapped around. On a retrofit, we have to keep that gutter open to keep water flow through there. And this is kind of what we're looking at doing to the pavement. Cut out a section there, mimic the dimension from the curb that a parked car would occupy. We also did look at, hey, can we do something in the middle of the road and force traffic around it? So we incorporated that in the trial process too. Some of the things that were crucial to the decision on this was lighting. Well, hey, this thing will be out there at night too. So we made sure that we wanted to be near a street light. So you could do this if you're looking at a retrofit, you have to look at existing light. When we were doing the new subdivision with that one on Blue Lake, we talked to Evergy and made sure that they were to place street lights at those locations. So when new street lights were new, they had to go where we were planning. When the street lights aren't existing, we had to plan to where the lighting was. So here's the chicane with the offset, and that yellow is kind of just my representation of the street light vicinity. Here's when they're aligned from each other. And then we did do a median. A complaint here was that, hey, the side street traffic is really not stopping, they're just blowing through. So they thought there might be some residual or side benefit of this having the effect on the side street, which really wasn't the original intention, was more just the through speeds. But in the end, it became pretty challenging at this location. We had to take it out because of it wasn't getting hit too much, but we just heard too many complaints about people maneuvering around it, so we removed it. You also lose a longer section of parking because we had to sign no parking on the adjacent curb feeding into this and adjacent to the feature itself. The results of this one. So we did quite a few speed studies before and during the pilot program. We saw throughout the corridor about a 3.5 mile an hour drop in both the average and the 85th percentile speeds. The second number there is at the features themselves. So we saw a little bit more, that 3.5 incorporates the whole length. But at the features themselves, we saw even a little bit more, 4.5, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're out there next to a moving car, it's noticeable. One element of data I have not gleaned from this, but I wish I could, is what is that like top 10, 5% of the speeds? What happened to that? Because you could have lob off quite a bit of that, but if it stays mostly in that top 15% percentile, you may not see obviously that percentile, 85th percentile, change very much. So that's where I'd like to see maybe some of this effect, what its effect was on the upper reaches. Sadly, we did not move forward with the permanent installations because everyone was so worried about losing parking. So we actually were looking at some other options for permanent installations where there aren't as many homes that front the roadway, but maybe side yards. So we're kind of still in limbo on trying to find locations for the permanent. With that, I'll hand it back over to Haley and the rest of the group.
Thank everybody for talking, of course. I think that was really insightful, and I definitely think you guys all exceeded my expectations for that today, and I think this was a great kickoff to this webinar series. So I appreciate you guys all taking the time. So before Slade gets started, which if y'all don't know Slade Ingstrom works with GFT, and he helped coordinate a lot of this webinar, and he's going to moderate the Q&A for us. So we got all of our speakers turning on their cameras. I'm going to put them all on the screen, and we'll get to some Q&A.
All right. Let's start. Dee Dee had put in there, Dan had mentioned the word acronym TEAP. We put it in the chat, but it's the Traffic Engineering Assistance Program. It's through KDOT Bureau of Local Projects. And then Haley had actually put in the application there, which I think they take them all the time. I think it's only once a year they put them out though. So you can fill it out anytime and they'll hold it until they select for that year. So don't feel shy about putting it in. Vanessa actually had one in here that she said, so for each speaker, we'll do this in the order that you guys presented. So Casey, Dan, Mike. For all speakers, what has been the most surprising barrier to implementing safety solutions? And then there's a follow-up second one we'll do after that.
So for me, it was basically old ways of thinking. Being one of three commissioners, it's tough sometimes to get things moving forward in a different open mindset. And a lot of times when we would come up with new ideas, we would be challenged with, well, if we do the exterior, the edge lines, they're going to want the center line, or it's not going to pan out, or it's not going to, it was always negative thinking. So I think the challenges is just overcoming leadership to have an open mind and say, you know what, you have to take risk to see rewards. And so that's kind of where we were at.
Same question to Dan.
So I would echo that, and that also stealing Mike's thunder is that sometimes you can come up with the greatest engineering solution, and then the public says, well, I don't want that on my street. For everybody who's complaining because they've got kids on the block, there's somebody else that doesn't want a speed bump or doesn't want a geometric improvement. We get calls from people on both sides of the spectrum. I mean, you've made it too difficult for me to get to work in the morning or whatnot. So, you know, there's just a second side to every story, it seems like. And I think one of the ways to get around that is to make sure that maybe you're involving the neighborhood and having conversations with them up front about what those solutions are and what it means and why you're doing that. And that's not something that we have always in Derby been great at. That median, if we had gone and talked to the neighbors, the business owners ahead of time, we may have headed a different direction or come up with a different design. But certainly two sides to a story, and different people have different views on what's a problem and what's not a problem and what's a solution and what's not a solution.
Nice, well put. Mike?
Yeah, Dan, I couldn't agree more. That public engagement, it's funny how that goes, in case you experienced that too. And, you know, I think it's kind of, sometimes you kind of have to kind of remind yourself and build yourself back up because you're doing it in response for the public. You're like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm expending this effort to go to bat for trying to get something to address the concerns I'm hearing. And then to kind of hear it like, you know, feel like it's being ripped to shreds and there's no appreciation. You kind of have to get past that. Like how much it feels personal, you know, like, and lack of appreciation. And then, yeah, sometimes just take to heart what they're saying and find what might work for them. The other element I'd say has been a challenge is just the collaborative effort. There's so many people that have a stake in this, and sometimes it's ones that you're not thinking. You know, we oftentimes forget on our projects the school district and their busing. Like how many times we have to take that into account. You know, there's WPD, transit, like the fire code when we were looking at subdivision regs became an element too.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well said. I think you actually addressed Vanessa's second question, which was what have you learned through those challenges? I think maybe instead of that, maybe if you know, pick like a piecier project and if you had to do it again, you know, and you guys can kind of piggyback on this one maybe too, because I think I heard similar notes from all of you, but what would you have done differently in those moments that, you know, were very tough? You know, what's your words of wisdom for everybody to kind of go through as they go through these kind of issues as they come up?
I think for me is just being proactive with communicating what we're striving to do before we do it. Because one of the things with the white lines is we were implementing that without a lot of community engagement. It was more of what we learned on the inside from doing our analysis and different things. So we knew that we wanted to do it, but I think communicating the information on the front end would help us on the back end to just because usually it's the barrier of communication, or people don't understand the method behind the thinking, but when you explain it, then they turn around to understand why that we're doing the things we're doing. So being proactive on communicating.
Communication is really important in those situations. One of the things that we try to do at the city, whether it's engineering or building trades or planning, is not say, well, here's the standard, but then provide a little bit of guidance on why that standard was developed and what it means, what the numbers are, and educate them on why that speed bump next to an intersection might make things less safe rather than more safe, or what happens when you put up a signal that isn't warranted and that you actually increase delays and actually can create more accidents, and that being the public, but also the elected sometimes who don't have engineering backgrounds, and explaining, here's the details, and have you thought about this piece of it, and this is the why.
Probably the one element I kind of gleaned through that trial period was that one luckily was not a project I had to do. And so I was lucky to be able to start a lot of those public meetings by saying, I am not forcing anything on anybody here. We can walk away at any point. And that's ultimately what we did. But that oftentimes helped diffuse the tensions. Like, I think there's so much public impression of like the government's just going to force something on me, and they're here and they've already made up their mind and they're just going to do what I don't want. And there's just like that almost starting off like an adversarial mindset or sentiment or background that they might carry into a meeting or into their comments. Again, you don't always have that ability, but sometimes just even telling like, hey, we're trying to do a project to this. We don't have to do a project, we don't have to make safety improvements. If there's so much pushback, we can try to find somewhere else to go. I know that's not always the case, but just trying to almost like making it almost got the buy-in from them. Because when I kind of said, hey, if you guys don't want to do anything, I walk away, I find another location to do the trial. And that brought that tension down in the room. It made them start to think collaborative. Oh, okay, well, maybe we can find something out that will work, instead of just like being an adversary that says, I don't like what you're coming to us with. Let's put our heads together and think of something that we can agree on.
No, I think that's very well said. As we're approaching time, I'm going to try to come up with we're going to go reverse order. We're going to go back with Mike, but I'll keep asking at least another couple of questions here. The SS4A process, you mentioned that you went through that. You went through planning, and now you have an implementation. What advice do you have for folks going through this process? What were things you liked? I think you hit a little bit on how you want it. What are some other good parts to that process that they should make sure they do?
I would harken back to the collaboration. The more people, the more data you can put together, but also the more people you can get that agree on a project needs. And that goes across the board for any project you're wanting to accomplish. I've seen that outside of Safe Streets for All with the North Junction getting an award. But anything you're wanting to do, the more unison that you have in identifying the priorities for a region is going to help you immensely. When there's infighting of saying, no, I want this, no, I want that, nobody wants to come from the outside and fund that project if that area itself can't agree on what its priorities are.
And I think we're at time. Haley, do you?
Yep, I'm going to jump in real quick with the remaining people we have. I'm going to launch a poll, and I'm going to preface this by saying it is a little wordy. I'll read it. It is only one question, but I would like attendees to please rank from, it should be 1 to 4. We tested a little bit earlier. Hopefully that works, but these are going to be potential future topics. So rank them in order of 1 to 4 of your most interest. So topic being authentic and holistic commitment to safety, meaning training elected officials, aligning emergency service goals. The next one would be safe system aligned policies and budgeting. The third one is design and project procedures. And then the last being land use and transportation integration. I apologize if some of these are repeating. For some reason, I don't know why it's doing that. But or if you just take the next, 30 seconds to read through that, rank those in order of interest for future webinar topics, and then we can commence this webinar. And I thank you guys all for attending, and thank you all to our presenters. Again, this was such a wonderful peer exchange, and we really look forward to doing these in the future and sharing all the successes that we've seen on the local system and the funding availability and the studies. And there's so much out there. And I love this partnership. So I appreciate you guys all taking the time today. And thank you everybody for attending. So I will leave that webinar or the poll open, and we will close it at time. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Aileen.